Okay, hi, welcome to the number 5 of the Biblical Heritage videos that I have been making for the Bib Hair class. Today we are going to be talking about some chapters in the Feminine Mystique, and this whole past week in class we have been talking about gender roles in the Bible, specifically women, of course, but we've been talking about Piper and Grudem. We've been talking about different passages in the Bible. We've been looking at some of the counter arguments against Piper and Grudem, and then kind of where some fallacies of their arguments lie as well. So today, pull out the handy dandy book, of course. Light, come back to me. And we're going to talk about, we're not going to go in order. I'm just going to go chapters 6, 8, and 10. Basically because in this past week we've been talking about gender roles, and when you talk about gender, especially in the Bible, it's, women are mostly seen for their sex, what they can do, I guess biologically, like what their anatomy is for, or how it's made up. And in chapters 6, 8, and 10 of the Feminine Mystique, we're also talking about those things as well. So I'll try to make this video short, even though we're going now for over 3 chapters, but we'll go over anyways. Chapter 6 is called The Functional Frieze, The Feminine Protest, and Margaret Mead. Okay. The next chapter, chapter 8, is called The Mistaken Choice. And then chapter 10 is called Housewifery Expands to Fill the Time Available. So let me pull out my notes that I've been taking over class. One of the big arguments of Piper and Grudem is the creation order. And this creation order starts in Genesis 2, and then is interpreted better, in their opinion, in 1 Timothy 2:13. Basically, the creation order is that man was created first, woman was created second. Male is created with dominant biological parts, and women are more secondary. And when you're looking at this through the Feminine Mystique, Frieden talks a little bit in chapter 6 about the functional frieze, the feminine protest, and Margaret Mead. And in chapter 6, she really discusses Freud and then Margaret Mead, and they're two different opinions. And basically what Freud is, advocating for is that women, women's biological roles, their anatomy makes them submissive to men, basically because they were made second in the creation order, and then also they birth children, and he also goes over women have this thing called penis envy, and I kind of talked about that a little bit in my last blog post. But Frieden also talks about a woman named Margaret Mead, and Mead's approach to women was that they should be educated, but that they also should remain in their biological function, that they should be secondary towards men, which is really ironic because Mead was a kind of a feminist in her own time, which is really weird. So the things that she writes about are that women are secondary, but she herself was a very strong, opinionated woman, which is just a little different. But she kind of does agree with this creation order, which is just very interesting. So Piper and Grudem their argument comes from 1 Timothy 2:13, which I thought I might just pull up on my Bible. So we're going to look now at the Bible. And we're going to look at 1 Timothy 2:13. And we're going to see what he says, and we're going to break it down. Okay, 2:13. Here we go. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women will be saved through childbearing. Fantastic. If they continue in faith, love, and holiness with propriety. Nah, I don't really like that at all. Okay. I guess what we talked about a little in class is that this was a patriarchal, I'm just going to say it like that, period, where the woman's role was to continue the lineage, to, you know, not really be all too much a mother, but the point was to continue the lineage, to carry on the man's name. And as, you know, is pointed out in Timothy, you know, woman, of course, is seen as the submissive role. She's to be second to whatever the man is. And so, yeah, her responsibility is just to continue the line, to be, Sarah had Hagar be the surrogate mother, but she was bitter, of course. And we talked about this kind of in the first couple of videos. In the feminine mystique, especially in chapters 8 and 10 as well, it talks about just being a housewife, just being what your sexual role tells you to. And a lot of the arguments for women at this point in time, kind of in those 40s and 60s, as Frieden talks about, is for women to continue those roles that we are seeing in the Bible, that Piper and Grudem are talking about. Women are just supposed to be there for men's sexual needs, and women are, of course, only seen as much as their body parts are able to allow them to be, which is through childbearing, being a mother, caring, being sympathetic, but and that's basically that. And then a woman is supposed to be silent in the church, but we're going to talk about Paul's letters in the next video. Right now we're focusing on this anatomy role, and that a lot of people urged women during these times to fulfill what was in the Bible. They took a lot of these points that Piper and Grudem are taking to heart, and that they should not at all be like Deborah, who is another woman we learned about in the Bible, which Frieden, you know, encourages to be more like Deborah, of course, but to be kind of like what we see in Proverbs, what we read in Proverbs for class, is that a woman has beauty. She does have strength, but her strength needs to be limited to her gender role, which in my opinion, gender roles are really more of a societal role that is placed on a woman. They're not really your gender roles. I think they're more society's expected gender roles. So, you know, their beauty, but in Proverbs, though, is something that in Proverbs, we don't see that sexuality is really included in here. Women aren't seen as sexual beings, but, you know, in Timothy and in Genesis, we are seeing women as women are specifically meant for those sexual roles. And Frieden talks about that with being a mistaken choice, which is chapter 8. Women are definitely that choice that they're always going to be the second choice. They're not supposed to be the ones who are picked first. They're not supposed to be the ones who are decided for jobs. They're always supposed to be in that one gender role. And even though as much as our minds progress, and as much as our society progresses and everything, you could call it evolution, women are still seen as these, you know, 2,000-year-old biblical roles. Kind of crazy. And in chapter 10, called Housewifery Expands to Fill the Time Available, we can see that women are definitely taking examples from Genesis, that they are supposed to be taking care of the home and taking care of the children. And I'm definitely sure, you know, back in the times of Genesis, and even the times of, I guess, kind of when Jesus was here, so around that, I guess, 2,000 years ago, and, you know, definitely even further than that, women they had a lot to do in the house, and they can also do a lot in the community as well. you know, women didn't have electricity, they didn't have a lot of the fine things that we have today. Having children and taking care of children took more time than it would in, you know, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And during these 40s, 50s, 60s, it definitely doesn't take as much time to take care of a child, to take care of a home. So what do you do with that extra time? And that's what Frieden talks about in chapter 10, is that, you know, women should not be constrained to these biblical roles, almost, that, you know, are pushed, that are oppressed, almost, for women in society. Instead, that they can use that time for other things. So I think definitely we see in chapters 6, 8, and 10 of Frieden that what is seen in Genesis and Timothy, in some other parts of the Bible, even a little bit of Proverbs, but not really the whole thing, is that women are definitely meant to be childbearing, to be mothers, and to be taking care of that home. Their gender roles by society confine them to that. And even, you know, 2,000 years later, which is in Frieden's time, those biblical roles are still seen, and anatomy is used to oppress women to those gender roles. So that's my conclusion for this, and hope to see you guys later. Bye.